Welcome to one get to package them all and on the Salsa find them. So I asked for this BOF in response to a couple of things that happened during the DPL campaign. First of all, we were talking about the idea of consolidating our packaging work on Salsa. And basically how, yeah, you can NMU a package, but that doesn't necessarily mean you can even reliably commit or merge a request to it. And the second thing we were talking about is, and of course that conversation also very quickly got into Git workflow and, well, hey, even if you had the right repository, would you even understand what it was, about? But then we, things have evolved since then, and I think that we have a broader scope than that original scope. But what I did want to do is have a requirements gathering session where we focused on trying to understand all the requirements people had surrounding Git in Debian for packaging. And we're here to gather requirements and understand why people have those requirements. We're not going to judge or rank those requirements. We're going to have conflicting requirements. I can name a couple right now. We should have exactly one Git data model / repository layout for all of our Debian packaging. There are people who want that. Of course, that one model needs to be patches unapplied, as well as the monolithic formats that the Rust people are using, at the same time as being the dget downstream, dget view. Well, maybe we're not going to be able to meet all of those requirements at once. That's okay. What we want to do is write them down so that in our future discussions, we make sure we aren't missing any. Unfortunately, Polya agreed to join us today, and if we get a little off track and get into judging requirements, he'll let us know. So I'd like to start. Ian has done some really great work trying to outline all of the different ways that people in Debian have been approaching, I guess, the different workflows for Git packaging. And so I asked him to come and present that work, because I think that captures a huge chunk of some of the things we're thinking about.
Right. So I've been working on Git stuff in Debian for a number of years now, and the more I talk to people about this, the more I discover that different people are doing often very different things. It's actually often very hard, even in like a bar conversation where you're really focused and you've got both of each other's attention and a really high bandwidth interaction, or if you've got a whiteboard or whatever, it's really hard to have these conversations because often we don't even speak the same language, and you kind of like talk at cross purposes for like 10, 15 minutes, and then you're like, oh! So I've been trying to, one of the things I've been trying to do recently is at least collect information about what it is that people are doing and how they do it, and give some of these things some names. So I suppose the first thing I want to say is there's a distinction. Sam talked about workflows. There's a distinction between workflows and what I'm calling the branch format. So let us say that you've got your thing on Salsa. Most people have a thing on Salsa. And the question is, for me, what is that thing on Salsa? What does it look like? When you git clone it, what do you see? When you git log it, what do you see? And it turns out that there are branch formats, as I'm calling them, that have for which it is possible to have completely disjoint, totally disparate ways of managing that same branch format. And it's quite possible even, it doesn't happen very often because members of the same team usually share each other's working practices, but it's quite possible for two people in the same team to have completely different workflows and still exchange a branch somehow, provided that branch is in the same format. So what really matters for our collaboration is less the precise commands you type and more what the thing is that you're exchanging with your colleagues. And this is really awkward because people don't normally talk about that. If you ask people what do they do, normally I've had this experience loads, right? People give you a list of the runes they type. And the runes they type are like combinations of Git build package options, or, oh yeah, that's our Perl team special wrapper script, which does something. And you look at these runes and you've got no idea. So usually the best way to find out is to look. You can normally, if you're a human, for a robot it's a bit hard, but for a human you can normally look at the thing and see, oh, well, this is probably this. So this is the most common one. I'm calling it unapplied. Some people call it patches unapplied. Git build package calls it the patches unapplied packaging branch. And here we have a description of the screensavers come on.
Yep, sorry.
Here a description of what you find if you git clone this. So you get a Debian directory containing Debian control and Debian changelog and all that other kind of stuff. And you get all the upstream source code, like, readme, makefile.am, whatever, circ.c, whatever there happens to be there. But if we have changed any of the files, those changes are not recorded in the directly upstream file. So if we, deleted some offensive comment from the README, there will be a patch so that when it was, installed in user share doc, it's not offensive anymore. There will be a patch in Debian/patches/ something or other, remove offensive comment from README, which would be a diff to delete that comment from the README. And the copy of the README in the root of the source tree would still have the offensive comment in it. So all the changes that we make are not represented directly in the upstream file. So if you git log one of the upstream files, you hopefully get the upstream history. Maybe you get like some tarball thing from GBP. And when people like edit these patches, and the number of tools that people use to edit the contents of Debian patches is astonishing. It's not even practical to try to list them. Everybody has their own thing. The most common ones are GBP PQ and basically directly using Quilt. So that's unapplied, right? And that's already quite complicated. I've just spent 5 minutes explaining it. If we could go back to the other tab now.
Yep.
It's at the top of this table. This is only the first 3 lines of this table. This table has got about a dozen rows in it. And they're different, right? So we have here the next one along is people who just git merge from upstream, right? With the unapplied stuff, because you haven't put your changes directly into the upstream files, you can't sort of git cherrypick from upstream and git merge from upstream. You have to separate your things out into patches. Some people generally don't, their difference from upstream is so small, often even absent or just, 1 or 2 changes. And often they're changes that they, because they have a good relationship with upstream, are going to go into upstream soon anyway. They find it more convenient not to bother maintaining that as a nice stack of individual patches. Instead, they just make whatever changes they like, and typically what they do is they use either 3.0 with single patch, so that all of the Debian changes in the source package end up as a single patch called patches/Debian changes. There's a tool I wrote called Git Deb Rebase, which looks similar at first glance. You get the same thing, you check out the tree, the upstream files are there, they have the Debian modifications in, but if you run like GitK or some other kind of history viewer on that, you'll discover the branch structure has got this there's this sort of merge at the top, and why is this branch here and what's going on? I won't go into details, but if you know, the way to edit that is a way of maintaining the linear series in some complicated way, a bit like Git DPM. Git DPM is another one of the entries in this table. So everything that everybody does is different. We have, amongst our branch formats, we have branch formats that don't fast forward. Some people, and I don't even have that in this table yet, but some people make a new Git branch. Every time they go to a new upstream release, they Git rebase, and they have a separate branch for each upstream release. And they never stitch them together. Some people don't put the upstream source code in their Debian Git branch at all, and they have a Debian Git branch which just contains a Debian directory and no upstream files at all. And there's ways, typically I think they're using Git build package to build that, because it knows how to, if you want to actually build it, you obviously need the upstream source code, and it knows how to kind of combine them for building. So I mean, we could like page through this. There'll be like 4 screenfuls of this. I don't think that would be very...
I mean, I think basically my take on this is that this is a good set of requirements about the branch formats that were in use today. We may get to a point, since we're just gathering requirements and we're not deciding what we would use going forward, I think for the purposes of this BOF, we can read into the record all of the above.
Right, and I wanted to say something about this. Right now, I have my favorite here, right? I wrote a tool, right? So, if I could put another hat on, I'd say, oh, everybody should be using Git deb rebase. But actually, if I step back a bit, not all of the entries in this table have some good reason for them, in my personal opinion, but most of them do. Most of them solve some problem. They make, each of these make some things harder and some things easier, and some of them are more convenient in one way or more convenient in another. And those kind of trade-offs often work differently for different packages. They work differently for different people. So I find it hard, there's some of these here, right? Probably about half of them when I say, if you're doing this, you're just wrong, right? And, I won't do that here because I'll get squawked at by this bird. But at least half of these, I'm willing to say, if you came to me in the bar and said, why don't you hate this one? I would say, I'd be able to give you an answer. I'd say, well, that one is, it's quite good in this way. Personally, I don't think that's so important, but, there are people who like that.
And that is, like, if you in the audience have a question, like, why do people do X, that's going to help you formulate other things that you want to bring forward as requirements today, feel free to ask that. I think if we're done with the survey, what I'd like to do is, so I think I'd like to kind of open it up and basically, what are the things we need to consider in Debian when we're talking about how we want Git packaging to work? And basically, have people start bringing up comments, and have High Voltage start, trying to get a one-sentence summary of each comment. If we get stalled, I'll start talking, because I certainly I can bring in things from the list to think about.
Right, so this is a topic people have opinions about. So, come and have your opinions, please. I know it's not the, friendliest format for standing up at a mic and telling us all your personal Git opinions, but that's what we're here for.
Well, right, because we're cutting out the arguments. At least we're hoping to. So
right, nobody will tell you you're wrong for wanting something.
Yeah.
So tell us what you want. Excellent.
So I'm assuming you want requirements for the system of this scale. So
well, we don't have a system. We want what do you want out of everything?
Yes. So I'll start simple. So if I have a Debian-only package and I maintain it in Git, I shouldn't do anything extra.
That's really good. Basically, for native packages, you should just be able to use Git. Okay?
That's. Yep.
Next.
Okay, I'm going to add one. And this is maybe obvious, but we have this notion of uploads, right? And binaries, and we've got branches on Salsa, but there has to be a way for the maintainer to say when the branch or branches or whatever it is should be considered for turning into binaries, built into binaries, and distributed to Debian users.
So there has to be a way to release a package to Debian, or release.
Right, a way to mark the point of release.
Yes.
As Igas asked about native packages, I'm of the opinion there should be no native packages at all, because we have derivatives. What about non-native packages?
Sorry, we're not here to debate previous speakers.
Can I try and rephrase Holger's idea? Because actually I think there is an important requirement here. There is an important requirement here, which is that it should be easy for a Debian derivative to maintain their stuff in Git on top of our Git stuff in a way that is convenient for them.
Okay. Another one that from Ian's, I think that Ian will agree with this one, that it should be easy for users who are familiar with Git to take software in Debian and modify it for their own needs using basically something very close to Git tools and build it and use it.
We have another audience question. Do come up.
Hello. I would really love to be able to trivially cherry pick individual patches from upstream and still get merge requests on Salsa. So that's kind of like a two-part.
Right. This is two requirements. It's a combined requirement.
But either or is not very interesting.
So I mean, is a reason why you think you might get either or? Like, do they conflict with each other?
Sometimes they do.
Can you explain how?
Most of the branch formats in my table do not support this, or fail to support one or the other of these requirements.
Okay, understood.
Let me repeat the requirement then. Yes, the requirement is that we want to be able to git cherry pick from upstream, and also to be able to take Git merge requests on Salsa.
So, for example, some of the branch formats, like the Debris-based branch format, do not support general merges. I mean, yet.
Right.
In an unapplied branch format, you cannot directly take a cherry pick from upstream. So I guess one of the things I think we should explore is the kind of, to what extent do we want to move things to Salsa? People had talked about basically making it easy for all Debian developers to be able to modify a package just like they can NMU something. And if you stick something in the Debian group on Salsa, you get that today. But if you stick something in another team-related group, it's actually harder to achieve that.
And we've got like two people queuing at the mic.
Sure, great. Thanks.
Yeah, so I agree that being able to cherry pick things from upstream or even merge from upstream and have a consistent Git history is very useful. But on the other hand, as long as we have source packages, it's very useful to have the contents of a Git branch to be as similar as possible as what you would get by unpacking a source package from the archive.
So you want it to be, the Git branch format to be as similar as possible to what you get from a source package.
Can I ask, there are two possible requirements there, and I want to separate them out. One of them is that the tree you get when you look at the Git branch is as similar as possible to the directory tree that you get when you unpack the source package.
Yes.
And the other is that is some kind of requirement on the history, and I'm not sure exactly what that would be, but it would probably involve something to do with the quilt patches.
Yes.
Which do you mean?
Yeah, I mean,
I
so-
certainly want the first one, so I want that one to be written down in the list.
Yes. Yeah, my point is, especially if you are maintaining like a large number of packages in a team, like the Ruby team has some 1,000 packages, it's useful that they're all the same and they have patches unapplied. It's a little bit inconsistency with the tool. Some do use Git PQ, GBP PQ, and the others use just plain Qt, but it's useful to have that option as long as we have source packages. If we get rid of source packages and we do not have the Debian patches directory anymore, then I don't think anybody cares about that anymore.
Okay, next. Actually, I guess one thing that we should also write down is that it is useful to have consistency across a team. I mean, that's, yes, but very true.
So Sam mentioned a requirement of making it easy for non-Debian insiders to modify and use software in Debian. I'd like people who understand, who have domain knowledge and who understand Git to be able to contribute to Debian without doing a PhD in Debianology. So in a less snarky way, I mean not learning a lot of Git-specific tool, or not learning a lot of Debian-specific tools.
I think that's what I was trying to say, but yes.
They're slightly different, right? One of them is a requirement that it's easy for users to basically act as a downstream. And David's requirement is that it's easy for those, hopefully those same people, to then come and become contributors to Debian so that they won't have to learn a lot of extra stuff.
Ah, I get it. Okay, yeah. So basically we want people to be able to contribute usefully patches.
And maybe even become a maintainer.
Yeah.
We want to...
I explicitly don't want them to contribute patches. I want them to do uploads without having to think about Quilt or patches or anything from the 1970s.
Oh, right, no, okay, but you want them to be able to, I'm sorry, you want them to be able to contribute changes to the packaging using Git tools.
And do uploads.
If they're a Debian maintainer.
Of course, I'm not talking about dropping key requirements or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm talking about tooling.
Okay.
That was a sort of way of just saying I hate Quilt in more words.
Okay. Do we have anyone queued?
Yeah, we've got two.
Great.
I'd like to have the Debian changelog.
Mike, can we...
Okay. I'd like to have my Debian changelog auto-generated from my Git log. For example, and the changelog entries never cause merge conflicts and things like that.
Can I suggest that? So I was trained as an engineer, and we have this concept called a solution-neutral problem statement, right? Your problem here is not really, I want the changelog auto-generated. Your problem really is you want to not have to manually generate any changelog stuff. And that could be achieved by, for example, automatically generating the changelog, but it could also be achieved by abolishing it. And I don't want to, what I want to do is to reframe that requirement so that if somebody thinks we must continue to have a changelog that is separate from the Git log, that is a separate requirement.
So can I suggest that, unfortunately, I've found that when people try and state solution-neutral problem statements for requirements I've stated, and they get it wrong, I find it very dismissive.
Okay.
So I would recommend that if you want to add a second requirement of your understanding of the solution-neutral problem statement, and then in the process where we go and
Okay, I didn't mean to dismiss, obviously.
Yeah. No, I didn't think you did at all.
Do you actually agree with me on that point?
I didn't really understand what you proposed instead of generating
I'm
a changelog.
observing that your complaint, I think, is that you're having to do manual work on changelogs.
No, presently I only create Git commit messages, and my changelogs are generated automatically. And I like that very much.
And you want to keep that?
And I want to keep this, yes.
Right. You want not to have to start doing manual work on changelogs?
Yes, in my experience, doing changelog entries manually lead to merge conflicts or rebase, make the interactive rebase complicated.
Right. One more?
If we're putting everything in Git, I'd like some easy discoverability. So things live all over Salsa and team directories and in the Debian project or whatever. I'd like to be able to know, given any source package name, what Git repo I need to check out to work on that. So some sort of redirector or hierarchy that means that, like, I can check out all of FreeBSD ports or all of Gen2. I know where to check out Debian stuff. I know where to point someone who's not familiar with Debian. If you want to play with the Debian packaging, go to git.debian.org/package name or something like that. I think that would be really useful if we're pushing things into Git.
I absolutely agree.
Okay.
Noodles, talk to me in the bar.
So I would actually like to add to that requirement. I want to be able to do that for the version of the, one of the things I want to do that for is the version of the package that is closest to what the maintainer is working on today. Like the version that hasn't been uploaded to Unstable yet, and that is in the format that the maintainer works with, so that I can make things as easy for the maintainer to apply my changes as possible.
Right. I think Noodles' requirement needs to be satisfied both for
Yes.
that and for the version of the package that is in the archive.
Agreed. That's a separate, yeah, I think both of those are
Those are
important.
two separate requirements that are very similar.
One of the things I'd really like
We
to
have
be
a...
add me to the queue.
Okay.
Okay. I would like to contribute without knowing the workflow of the current maintainer. I mean, just push a change to a Git branch, like a feature branch, and wait for the results, having a CI associated with the repository.
Great. Sam, you're up.
I would like to be able to know if there are more than one branch format. I would like to be able to programmatically know which one I'm dealing with.
Well, but it can be implemented or saved in the same repository. You can read it. The recipe that you use is going to be automated, so you don't have to know everything about
Are you
it.
proposing a solution or a requirement?
No, I am talking about I don't care the solution that you use. I just push my commit and
Right.
wait.
Sorry, I think we're confused here. Sam was not replying to your requirement.
Okay.
He was making a separate requirement of his own.
Totally unrelated to what you were saying.
Right. So there's no connection between your requirement, which is a good one, and Sam's, which is another good one. And we
Thanks.
have someone else at the mic, and we have 10 minutes.
Well, ideally, I would actually want to contribute to Debian without even touching Git or command line, just from a web interface. Open a file, click edit, edit it, propose to the maintainer who has the permissions to do that.
Okay. Yeah.
I have a requirement. I would like translators to be able to do their work without having to interact, certainly without having to interact with patches. And ideally, I'm not sure that translators actually want to work in Git. My experience with them so far has been that they send, patches. I think it's possible that translators would prefer to work with some kind of web service or some kind of dedicated application, and I want that to be easy for them. And I don't know what the translators want, and probably if there's someone here in the room who does translation work, maybe you could tell us what translators want.
Can you cue me for Sean at some point?
You're
Remember, he had
up.
those two requirements that.
You're up.
Okay, so Sean couldn't be here today, but had a couple of requirements. First of all, I guess one of his requirements is that he wants the history of a discussion surrounding a change to be a permanent archival artifact. For example, bugs don't go away, and if you have a discussion of 5 rounds of a patch in the BTS, then we keep that forever. And he believes that if we move to merge requests or something like that, that archival nature of that or commit comments or any sort of discussion of the history of a change in Debian should be archived. I can't remember what his second one was. Do you? No, it was fine. I mean,
it may come back to me.
Okay. If not, we will make sure that it gets, added on as we discuss this on a list.
Hello.
We have Tolef at the mic.
So I see a Git history as you're telling a story. You're telling a story about the evolution of your program. So I want to both be able to tell that story, but I also want to be able to extract some set of patches or subset of patches which can be merged as a single thing for upstream to consume back, which I think might be a conflicting requirement in itself.
Yep. I want to be able to rebase and modify history when it tells a better story.
Yes.
Yep.
So on the merge request one, I think it's possible that we've kind of merged Sean's 2 requirements. So one is that the merge request discussions should be like public and archived. But also they need to be discoverable.
Ah, right.
You need to be able to find the merge request. You need to be able to find the discussion supporting a change by starting looking at the code and being able to find why that code is like it is.
Right. So, for example, basically being able to discover where all the discussions of a particular set of code is and have it be long-lived. Like not have it be on a private Git server that went away 3 years ago.
Right. That's the archival requirement, but the discovery requirement is that you can start with a commit. Presumably you've got like a Git history, so I imagine the requirement is that you have to be able to start with a commit, and from that be able to locate the discussion so that you can read it.
Okay. How much time
And there's
do I
a
have?
related 5 minutes, I think. And there's a related requirement that everybody must be able to easily contribute, or at least everybody appropriate must be able to easily contribute to those discussions.
Can I get people out there? A lot of people during
We've got 2 in the queue.
Sure.
Sorry.
This is Sean. So Sean replied from IRC saying that the second requirement was that discussions are sometimes hard to find within Salsa because there are a lot of entry points, and that it could get a lot worse if we switched away from GitLab due to factors outside of our control. So discussions should be discoverable.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
So this is a problem description more than a requirement, but I would like to know whenever I'm cherry picking something from upstream, if rebase is easier to be done with less changes than doing 2 backports, one after another, and the second one is actually done before the first one, So you have like 2 queued patches, for example. One is related to a change that is like recent in upstream, and the other one is relative to something older. And then you have 2 backports changing the code, with something that could be just 2 cherry picks and not 2 backports.
I'm not sure I understand what you mean by backport.
So basically you're cherry picking something from upstream, right? And then you have something that depends on that code, like a positional change or something. So instead of having 2 positional changes by backporting 2 things, you just cherry pick the first change and then you cherry pick the second on top. So instead of like a merge, now you have 2 cherry picks. Much easier to maintain. And this is something to be done by the maintainer nowadays. If you are cherry picking something from upstream and you know the commit history, you know that something you're picking from upstream is older or newer than the one that you already have in Qt. And that will tell you if a rebase is easier or not.
So we haven't discussed push to upload very much.
No clear?
And we're running short on time, but I'd like to kind of get, if there are any, why do people want that? What is that going to do for them?
If you're maintaining QEMU, for example, and you backported something that...
Wait,
I'm sorry, I think we have spent...
Okay.
I think we've done yours. Thank you.
I would like to, if you could come up afterwards on that, but I would like to understand, because Git push to upload was something people talked about a lot, but no one's really talked about here.
Right.
All right.
Okay, so I have a requirement. We should not have source packages. Source packages should go away. We won't, you know, like, we won't get there for like at least another decade. But, you know, we should start that transition.
I came here partly for this reason. The source packages were mentioned several times. That whatever
Speak closer to the mic.
Whatever the branch structure is, it should be somehow related to the source packages to make us unconfused. And I mentioned the changelogs. It has the same problem, I think, that the changelog is an artificial simplification of the history. Source package is an artificial simplification of the code base. Both are not necessary, I think, and if we can get rid of them or can find better alternatives, then maybe we get less requirements for the branch structure as well.
So the requirement that I have been working to satisfy with Sean, we went out a sprint, is that you should be able to cause your package to be uploaded to Debian by pushing a Git tag somewhere.
Okay, so I think we're basically done. If people have any specific ideas on where we should continue this or how, please write to leader@debian.org. I mean, I think that we'll see some Debian Devel discussions in the future, but if you have specifics on how to approach moving forward, I would love to hear them.
Right. Also, I would like to put in a plug. I'm not going to like plug my tools, you know, anymore, but come to me in the bar if you're interested, and I'm happy to help.